Hey Bio Team. So there's a couple of ways that atoms can stick together. The first type of bond that atoms can form is something called an ionic bond, which occurs when one atom attracts an electron away from another atom to stabilize both of their valence shells. And when this happens, the atom that gains the electron becomes negatively charged, and the atom that loses the electron becomes a positive ion. And these opposite charges attract, they bond together. Now, the other type of bond that can form is called a covalent bond, which occurs when two atoms share electron orbitals. So we've got a couple examples of that here. But there's two different types of covalent bonds. The first type of covalent bond is called a polar covalent bond, which occurs when one of the elements in a covalent bond has a stronger electronegativity than the other atom. So in this case, since fluorine has a higher electronegativity, a higher ability to attract electrons than hydrogen, you can see that these shared electrons are closer to fluorine. And as a result, fluorine is slightly negative, and hydrogen is just slightly positive. It's slightly lost electrons. And so the most common examples that you'll see of polar covalent bonds in biology are hydrogen and oxygen, hydrogen and nitrogen, and hydrogen and sulfur. And in all three of these cases, hydrogen gets its electrons slightly taken away from it. And as a result, hydrogen will be slightly positive, and these other elements will be slightly negative. Now, the opposite of a polar covalent bond is a nonpolar covalent bond, which occurs when two elements have similar electronegativities and they share electrons evenly. So the most common examples of this in biology will be bonds between hydrogen and carbon, and bonds between two of the same types of elements. Obviously, the same elements will have the same ability to attract electrons, the same electronegativity. And in these cases, no elements become charged, no positive nor negative charges. And the reason why the charge of elements, or the lack of charge, matters is that charged molecules with either a positive or negative charge to them, can attract to other charged or polar molecules. Opposite charges will attract each other. Whereas nonpolar molecules without charge, will only interact with other nonpolar molecules. So a classic example of this is oil and water. If you try to mix oil and water, you'll find that they don't interact with each other. Oil will remain on the top of the mixture and water will remain on the bottom. And the reason this is so is because oil is a lipid, it's a fat, and it's made almost entirely of nonpolar carbon and hydrogen bonds. Whereas water, which is made of hydrogen and oxygen, is a polar molecule. The oxygen attracts the electrons and becomes slightly negative, and the hydrogen slightly loses its electrons and becomes slightly positive. So water molecules can attract to each other. And that's it. At this point, you guys have some practice problems. Best of luck.